So, last month in July, I read 15 books, and I have a lot to say about some of them, so let's just get into this. Alright, so first up in the books that I read in July was Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. This is about Ollie, who has recently undergone a tragedy, and she has this special place by the river that she likes to hang out and think, and one day while she's down there, she sees a strange woman trying to get rid of a book. She steals the book away and begins reading it, and it tells the tale of a family who lives on this farm in the 1800s who ends up making a creepy deal with a sinister, smiling man, which is just nightmare fuel right there. Soon after, Ollie is on a field trip to a local farm, and while there realizes that that farm is the farm from the story, and now there is something out there coming for Ollie and her classmates. This was fantastic. There's such transportive writing in it. The descriptions just sucked me in and made me feel like I was right there. I had no idea when I first started reading this that it was set in Vermont, until I think the first or second chapter was over. But I have a weakness for books that are set in Vermont, so that just kind of added to my overall enjoyment of this story. The characters are quirky, from the kids to the adults to the kind of sinister creatures. Everyone's pretty intriguing. There's some emotional bits to balance it out. Everything was kind of unsettling, but it was the perfect amount of creepy, especially since I believe this is a middle grade book. But overall, it was very enjoyable. There's a lot of fantastical elements, some horror, kind of deals with loss and making friends and everything like that. So it was very just, I don't know, I supremely enjoyed it, and I'm very excited because it's apparently the first of what is going to be a quartet that follows each season. So that's pretty cool. And as a side note, if you happen to be a fan of Doctor Who, and there is a particular episode where the creepy creature of the week is something that is particularly frightening for you, you might find this extra creepy, as I did. So, I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. And the next book I read was The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. A chance encounter in a broken down elevator sees young professional Alexa agreeing to go and be the date or fake girlfriend of Dr. Drew, accompanying him to his ex's wedding. And from there, sparks kind of fly, and the two try to navigate having a long distance relationship. So this book ended up kind of being a disappointment for me. I was expecting something a lot more funny and cute, I guess. I mean, there were some funny bits and there were some cute bits too, but overall, I didn't enjoy it as much as I was hoping to enjoy it, especially how much I had seen it being hyped by other people on BookTube. I mean, Alexa herself is wonderful. She's smart, she's sassy, she's really hilarious. She works very hard at her job as an assistant to the mayor of Berkeley, I believe. And she's also working very hard to get an outreach arts program for at-risk youth confirmed by the mayor. She is just all around awesome. The male protagonist, however, he's a pediatric surgeon who kind of cares a lot about one of his patients, and that's about the only good thing that he has going for him. Right off the bat, he was possessive and jealous and kind of a jerk. I mean, one of the male characters that he got kind of jealous about, I mean, that wasn't as big of a problem because that guy was a bigoted dickhead, but he also had a problem with the fact that his best friend and Alexa get along so well, and he got this jealous bullshit thing, and that's a red flag, by the way. If your kind of boyfriend is extremely jealous of your male friends or even his own male friends being around you, that's like a red flag, friends. Like, you should take note of that. So I didn't really like that. Another thing that kind of bugged me throughout was the amount of misunderstandings. I know a lot of misunderstandings is like the standard for romance novels, but this one was just like, there were so many, and it just kind of became like this repeating pattern. So they're in a long distance relationship, right? So they're sending texts back and forth. So they got cute texts, and then there's like something with a tone is taken wrong or whatever. And then there's like fighting in texts. And then they fly back and forth to see each other, which is another thing. But I don't really understand frequent flyer miles because I don't have them. So I can't fully comment on that. But that was something that bugged me too. But anyway, they just fly back and forth to each other. And then one of them picks each other up at the airport. They make out in the car. They go back to the apartment. They eat takeout or cheese and crackers on the couch, and then they fuck. And it's like rinse, repeat. It's like over and over and over again, which I know is like trying to develop things and like show the passage of time, but that just, it felt like it repeated, it's like the same things repeated themselves too much, which was also something that kind of bothered me. But again, my main problem with this would be Drew. He was presumptuous, possessive. He has a certain way of talking at Alexa instead of to her that I found very condescending. I didn't like it. And he also said something pretty ignorant about the outreach program, which I know was kind of forgiven at some point, but like, yo. But yeah, I mean, things that I did like about this book, I really liked the big girl rep. I liked the discussions on racism and a little bit that was discussed about the school to prison pipeline a little bit. I also really enjoyed the friendship that is between Alexa and Theo, who is her work husband. There's like no romantic feelings between them at all. They're just really, really good friends. And I always appreciate that when people can be like the opposite genders and there doesn't have to be any unrequited feelings there. There's just pure friendship. So I enjoyed that. And I mean, I know that navigating an interracial relationship, especially in the current climate, is probably not very easy at all. Especially when someone, Drew, doesn't apparently know how to not say stupid shit. But at the end of the day, I still think Alexa could have done way fucking better than him. So, I did end up giving this 3 stars because it was kind of disappointing to me, but I do know that this is her first work. This is her debut novel, so I'm hoping that some of like the repetition stuff and the stuff that didn't seem to flow well, I'm hoping that will be fixed in her other novels. And also, apparently, a couple of her other books they also deal with characters from this, but they're like side characters, so it won't have anything to do with Drew, and that's amazing because I'll probably enjoy them way more because Drew sucks. Okay. And the third book that I read was All American Girl by Robin Ha. This is a graphic novel memoir of the author's teen years when her mother uprooted them from South Korea to the southern United States in the 1990s, I believe it was. I really enjoyed this overall. Like, the art style is just cute. I love all of the colors. She also has a lot of like, let's see if I can find it. There's also a different kind of style thing when she's talking about like manga and anime, which I particularly enjoyed as someone who is a huge fan of that. Especially a section where she discusses going to a convention, so that was pretty cool. I also really appreciated how it addresses important issues like immigration, racism, fitting in, trying to find a sense of belonging. Especially after you've like left home. That's kind of really hard to reconcile. And also societal expectations that are placed on people in the US as well as Korea, especially on women. And it also talked about the struggles of moving to the US when you don't really know any English. A lot of languages are spoken here, but a lot, or most white people anyway, only speak English, and mostly don't really seem to give a fuck about trying to learn any other language. So it was good to kind of see like a perspective of like how she dealt with that. And I also really liked the mother-daughter relationship. Robin's mother was a single mother, and a lot of the times in the book, some of her decisions I didn't really like at first that she made, but as the book went along, I kind of understood where she was coming from, because she was always trying to find a better life for her daughter, while at the same time not like losing herself to those expectations that were placed on her as a single mother. But I really enjoyed this. Anytime there are mother-daughter relationships as like a focus in a book, especially when they're like complicated, I enjoy. And overall I really enjoyed this. I honestly don't really know that much about Korean culture or Korean animation or anything like that at all. Most of what I know has to do with like Japan. So it was nice to get kind of more of a look on Korean culture, and made me want to look more into consuming more media. But overall, this was just a really enjoyable read, and I ended up giving it 5 stars. And the next book I read was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. This is the author's memoir from her childhood and teen years growing up in the segregated southern United States, in the 30s and 40s, with some later chapters taking place in California. This book covers a lot of tough topics. There's child abuse, child sexual abuse, racism, a little bit of religious zealotry that also kind of leads to the beating of children. It's kind of a lot to take in. The descriptions of abuse especially are a very hard section to read, and if it's particularly like upsetting, well, I mean, it is particularly upsetting, but if it is something that's like potentially triggering for you, just to let you know that is in here. I think it's only like one chapter or maybe 2 chapters, but it's just, so just to let you know that's in here. But I do consider this to be an essential read. It's a look at that time period through the eyes of a small child, and it also, it's discussing those important things that happened to people and still are happening to people out there. So I mean, it is something that I believe is important to read. Which, I mean, some of the reviews. So when I started writing my review for this one, I was seeing a lot about people not wanting their children to read it in school, even though they were like, I mean, I don't know if like an 8-year-old should read this, but I mean, if your kid's in like junior high and high school, I see no reason why they wouldn't be able to handle this. I mean, there's sections that are rough, but they're topics that should be talked about. So, I mean, I don't know. I had a problem with some of the reviews I was seeing that I just felt like I had to say something about it, because they're just like, they want to protect their children from reading sordid materials, and it's like, honey, boo. Your child, your 15-year-old probably knows way more about sex than you do because the internet exists. So just first of all, deal with it. Second of all, I never approve of banning books or censoring books at all. I feel like, yeah, maybe you've never dealt with this, and maybe there are people out here who would be particularly triggered by this book. But then again, there are also people out there that, while this would be upsetting to them and remind them of stuff, just the way that Maya Angelou ended up like handling it and everything, I don't know. I just think maybe it would be helpful to someone out there, possibly. And I also feel like we need to discuss tough topics. You can't just make everything be fucking unicorns farting rainbows all the time. You have to look at the bad stuff too. You have to discuss it, because otherwise we can't deal with it. Yeah. So, I don't know. But in the course of reading this, I would say I didn't enjoy reading it just because of the content, but I appreciated the story, and I really do enjoy Maya Angelou as a storyteller. I did find a lot of her writing to be beautiful, and some of her observations on society and the people around her to just be like spot on, and I did enjoy parts of it, and I did appreciate the memoir overall. And in the course of reflecting upon that, and also reflecting on the other reviews and opinions that I was seeing, I kind of made the decision that in the future I am no longer going to be giving star ratings to memoirs or autobiographies, because I don't feel like I should really be rating my enjoyment or how I felt about a book, when it deals with someone's personal experiences. So yeah, I did not rate this, and the other memoirs that I read this month and from now on, I will not be rating those either. So yeah, even if this is upsetting, if you can handle it, you should read it, please. The next book I read in July was The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. This is, of course, Percy Jackson #1. I don't think I really need to summarize this, because a lot of people know what the fuck this is. Greek gods, modern take on myths, demigod children. Okay, there you go. I'm rereading this series because I recently bought the Heroes of Olympus series, so I wanted to refresh my memory. I enjoyed this. I think I enjoyed it possibly even more than the first time I read it, which was like 4 or 5 years ago. It was just great. Exciting, fantastical. Love the modern take on myths. Take some liberties with it, but hey, I enjoy that, because a lot of the myths are kind of really depressing, or Zeus is just fucking everything, which is kind of discussed in here slightly, but not quite, because it's like middle grade, so it's like haha, but it's not. Okay, you get it. Anyway, Percy is hilarious. I totally get his attitude problem. I'd be right the fuck there too. Annabeth is a badass, and Grover is a sweet baby angel. I had a great time reliving this. I gave it 4 stars. And the 6th book I read, which was beginning of the reading rush, was Black Klansmen by Ron Stallworth. This is a memoir of the time the first black detective in the Colorado Springs PD, aka Ron Stallworth, launched an undercover investigation into the local chapter of the KKK with the in-person help of a white detective. This was pretty great. I watched the Spike Lee movie the night before I read this. I would highly recommend both of them. Both are just fantastic. The investigation itself was like really ballsy, intriguing, kind of funny. The author has a writing style that is just both funny and also sucks you in. yeah, it wasn't too different than the Spike Lee movie. I mean, there were a couple of things that were put in there, I guess, for like dramatic effect or whatever, but overall, a lot of it, the things that happened were also in here. Um, yeah, it was a pretty good book to movie experience, I guess. Also a pretty timely read overall and a timely watch because the movie itself was only made in like 2018 and the ending of it packed a powerful punch, and the same can be said for the ending of this as well. Um, and it was just it was kind of a fascinating look into that time, and like I said, it's also kind of a timely thing because there were like protests and things. They were being held in Colorado Springs in 1978, and the cops handled it a lot better than they are handling protests in 2020. And it's like, what the actual hell is this? um, but yeah, this was just, it was a good read. If you are into investigative stuff, memoirs, I would suggest reading it. I would suggest reading it anyway, just because it's very interesting. There's also a couple of events and like fringe groups that were brought up that I'm kind of like curious about because I've never heard about them before. So I wanted to like look more into them and be like, where the hell are these? Do they still exist? Like, what is this? But yeah, I would highly recommend both the book and the movie. The movie is also fantastic. So yeah. And the next book I read was The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This is actually a reimagining of The Jungle Book. So this tale is about young nobody Owens, who is raised in a crumbling graveyard in the UK by his supernatural guardian and a whole slew of ghosts. So his life in the graveyard is kind of pretty, strange and unusual for a young person. But out there in the real world, beyond the graveyard's gates, the man who murdered his biological family is still looking for him to finish the job as well. This was just wonderful. Right from the very start, it has a creepy beginning. It is pretty creepy throughout. It is a very dark tale, but there is a lot of beauty throughout it. There's just whimsical and a little creepy like artwork throughout that I really, really enjoy. Let me see if I can find another good one. Oh, here's one of my favorite ones. It's just, it adds to it overall. This was just such a beautiful book. There's a lot more to this graveyard and to this book than meets the eye at first. It's rather mysterious. The characters are really fascinating throughout. There's fantastical elements that are really enjoyable. The one thing that's just a little bit weird, I would say, is how kids talk in this. They kind of talk like they're very tiny adults. But at the same time, I don't know if that's partially because this takes place in like England, and I mean, I'm American, but from what little bit I have seen of video clips of English children, overall their vocabulary seems to be like above and beyond what American kids' vocabulary is like at like 5 years old. So I mean, that might explain for why they kind of talk like they're 40. And also the kids are around adults all the time, so that might also account for it. So it's like a little weird, but you can kind of understand why their vocab's a little interesting for like 5 and 6 year olds. But overall, it's a beautiful, heartbreaking, heartwarming book about like growing up and living your life, and it's just, oh, I don't know. This is like now added to my all-time favorites list because the ending broke me into pieces, and I loved every minute of it. As soon as I put it down, I wanted to start reading it again, and that does not happen that often. So this was yeah, this was amazing. I hope they make like a stop motion movie of it someday. Yeah, I gave it 5 stars. And the next book that I read was All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is a memoir of the author's childhood and teen years growing up as queer and black in the U.S. from New Jersey to, I believe he went to college in like Virginia or Tennessee. Oh my god, I forgot. It's somewhere in the South he went to college. I know that like queer is kind of a controversial word, but that's how the author kind of describes himself, so that's why I'm using it, just so you know. This covers topics like grief, loss, racism, trying to see what it means to identify as both queer and black, and a man in society, trying to find a sense of belonging, self-acceptance, and like the love of your family, both, you know, biological and those you find. Overall, this was just a really great read. There's a little bit about sexual abuse in here, just as a forewarning. But I would definitely consider this to be an essential read, especially for young adults, which I believe is what this is geared towards. And I also really liked how it brought up the topics of not only gender fluidity, but also how men express themselves, or how it's like deemed okay how they express their feelings and whatnot, which is kind of not always easy to do in our particular society. So I really liked that. Also talked about that. I also really enjoyed George's talking about his family and how much love they have for him and another one of his cousins who is actually trans. And it was just, so I know that a lot of times out there, not every family is going to be so loving and accepting, and I know that there's also families that are loving and accepting, but I think that what a lot, unfortunately, of what we see in media is people who have been kind of unable to go home again, or who have had to leave their homes and their families behind because of who they are. And I know while that's like the case a lot of the times, it was also nice to see representation of a family who loves you unconditionally, no matter what. They might not understand, but they accept and they love anyway. And that was also, I think, something that is needed to be seen more in media, because sometimes that is the case, and I think that was a nice thing to add. And one particular essay that is in here about the educational system and how history is taught or not taught in certain cases in schools also had me kind of thinking more about how my school taught history and historical figures. So that definitely led to me wanting to look more into some of these historical figures, such as some pretty nasty quotes that he brought up that Abraham Lincoln had actually said that I don't remember being taught at all. So yeah, further reads need to be done from this. But yep, overall it was an enjoyable read, and I would recommend. It's about her family growing up as a child of celebrities, dealing with fame, being a single mother, addiction, mental health issues, and the sometimes absurd things that have happened to her. This was actually an adaptation of her stage show, which I also believe was called Wishful Drinking. I have not watched the stage show. I think there's like at least clips of it online, but I haven't taken a look at it yet, so I don't really know how it compares. But yeah, this was just a nice little memoir. It's pretty sarcastic and observant. It was laugh out loud funny. I really enjoyed it immensely. There were a couple of jokey things or things she joked about that were kind of on the line. But it is also really hard to tell with her writing because she's so sarcastic and sardonic all of the time. So I don't know. But it was an enjoyable read. It was nice to get some more insight into her life. There were a couple of bits when she talked about like her mother and her daughter that it was a little bit hard to read just because Carrie Fisher's no longer with us and neither is Debbie Reynolds, so that was a little rough. But yeah, overall I really enjoyed reading it. Then next up, I read books 2 and 3 of the Percy Jackson series. I don't think I need to summarize those. Titan's Curse, action-packed, fun, funny. I enjoyed the like Odyssey references in here a lot. Percy is a mood. Annabeth is awesome. Grover's a good satyr. And Tyson, I completely forgot about Tyson. So he was a welcome addition. And then, it was 4 stars. And then I read the Titan's Curse. Again, fun, funny, action-packed. References to Hercules' labors, which was good. This one was a little more emotional. Things are really starting to shit's hitting the fan here. But again, I enjoyed it. Gave it 5 stars, and we have the introduction of like Bianca and Nico, and yay! But yeah, loved it. And then the next book I read, which was the last in the reading rush, was The Reader by Tracy Chee. So this is kind of complicated to summarize, but kind of also complicated to explain. So it starts out with Cephia, who is on the run. Cephia's her mother died, and then her father was murdered, and for the past several years, she has been on the run with her Aunt Nin. And they keep in their possession a secret item. One day, Nin has been kidnapped, and Cephia, to better understand why her aunt has been kidnapped, why her father was murdered, and what the hell this secret item is, she has to investigate it. And this secret item is actually a book. Because in Cephia's world, people don't really have books, and nobody knows how to read. That is until Cephia teaches herself how to read. So this one, I say it's complicated because I'm like looking at my notes, I don't really know how to explain this without potentially spoiling surprising things that happen. I will say that it was slow going at first. It took up until like chapter 8, so like about to here, for things to really pick up and get intriguing enough for me to like kind of fly through this. There's a lot of setup to be done. I mean, it's a fantasy world, so there is a lot of setup. There are a couple of POV changes, and I don't always like that in stories because I get kind of confused about things, but they worked for this. There's also a lot of like almost a philosophical question, sort of, in a sense, like trying to define what the hell a book is, which annoyed me at first, but then as the story went along, I kind of understood what was going on and appreciated it more. Something else I really liked was how the book, how the things are in the book. Like there's like a I don't know what that's supposed to be, like an ink or a blood stain right there, and then you've got like oh, let me see where it is. The beginning part, and it's like you've got kind of stuff like this stuffed in here throughout. There's like a bit crossed out here, and it ends up making sense later why things are like that. But it's just, I like those extra little elements to try to make you like a part of the story, and it's cool. yeah, the main character is Sephia. There's like the bad guys. There's her aunt. There's a group of pirates, which was a very welcome addition for me. Yeah, it was just, like I said, I don't really know how to explain this book without spoiling stuff, really. I will say it does. It takes you a little bit to get into it, but the payoff is worth it. Most definitely. It's a weird little book, but the payoff is definitely worth it. And there is the second book, The Speaker, which I definitely plan on getting at some point, and I'm allowing myself to buy books again. So, yeah, I ended up giving this 4 stars. Alright, then we get down to Percy Jackson 4 and 5. So, let's see, Battle of the Labyrinth. This one, again, action-packed, fun, funny, lots of great quotes in here. I really like the labyrinth and like Daedalus and everything. That's pretty cool. We get some more insight into characters. Shit's really going down. There's also a really good environmental message in here that I really appreciated, and I may have cried. This was 5 stars. And then I finished the reread of the series with The Last Olympian. Again, it's totally action-packed. We get a conclusion of sorts, which was a decent conclusion, but also at the same time leaves things open-ended enough for the next series, so yay. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I definitely cried. I also really loved who the Last Olympian actually is, who I'd kind of forgotten from the first time I read it, so that was cool. And also, all I really have to say about this is Nico. Fucking Nico D'Angelo. I love you, Nico D'Angelo. You're just, he's such a cute, little, sweet baby, and he's badass, and yeah, I loved it. Anyway, 5 stars. And then, the 15th, the last book, which mostly was read in other months, but I finished the last, 2 or 3 chapters of, was Northern Borders by Howard Frank Mosher. Finally, yay. So I'd been putting this off because I'd gotten to a particularly sad part that I knew was going to make me upset. But I finished it. So this book tells the tales of Austin Tut Kittredge III from his boyhood. So ages 6 to about 18, growing up in the disappearing hill country farms in Vermont in the 1940s and 50s, and his life living with his grandparents and some of his extended family. This book made me nostalgic for a time I did not fucking experience. I don't know anything about Vermont in the 40s and 50s because I didn't arrive there until 1989. I don't know what it was like, but this made me nostalgic as hell for things that I didn't fucking experience. It also just made me really sad and happy at the same time. It made me miss living in Vermont. It made me miss my grandparents, who I was also extremely close to, and it's just, there's colorful, quirky characters throughout, shenanigans, a beautiful setting, wonderful descriptions, transportive writing. Howard Frank Mosher was just so good at drawing you into a tale and really having you experience it all the way through with the characters. There's also life lessons. It's about growing up and kind of the loss of childhood and having to say goodbye to people, to the past, and to disappearing ways of life. It was such a solid, good read, and the ending, especially the last paragraph, broke me into a million fucking pieces, but I still enjoyed every minute of it. So yeah, I love this, and I gave it 5 stars. So that is it. That was all of the books that I read in July, 15 in total. I've had a slow start to this month, which I guess isn't that great because I am giving myself a bit to read. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna try to not read so many in a month, because then I end up feeling burnt out like I do right now, and barely able to read the books that I gave myself to read, because right now I'm in the middle of like 2 of them, and I'm having a hard time focusing. So don't do that, kids. All right, so that's that. Wonderful reading month overall. Found like 2 new favorites. Found or rediscovered favorites. Found a couple of authors that I want to check out more of their works. Found some interesting topics to like research more of. Like, it was just all around, it was a good reading month. So yeah, but I hope that you all are having a good weekend, and I will see you next time, guys.